Assalamu alaikum viewers, Alina Chowdhury here. I hope you enjoy watching ZMC TV Story Time with Alina Chowdhury. Today I'm going to read you Puss in Boots, written by Charles Perrault. Once upon a time there was a miller who had 3 sons. When he died, he left this mill to the eldest son, his ass to the second son, and his cat to the youngest, who wouldn't let their brother live with them because he only had a cat. So the poor lad was very sorrowful and wondered what he should do to get his bread. While he was sitting thinking about it, Puss jumped up on the table and touched him with her paw. "My dear master," she said, "do not fret. I will get your living for you. Only you must buy me a pair of boots and give me a bag." The miller's son had very little money, but he thought it such a wonderful thing to hear a cat talk that he couldn't refuse her request. So he took Puss to the shoemaker's and got him to make her a very special pair of boots, and then he gave her a nice lovely bag. Now, not far from the mill there was a rabbit warren, and Puss resolved to catch some rabbits for dinner. So she put some lettuce leaves and parsley into her bag, went into the warren and held the bag, hiding herself behind it, and little greedy rabbits, who knew no better, ran into it to have a feast. Directly they were safe in, Puss pulled the string of the bag and carried them off to her masters. The miller's son killed them and cooked them for dinner, but Puss took away the other, which was a very fine one, and hung it up for the next day's meal. But although their larders was thus provided, early the next day Puss took her bag and went into the warren, and in the same manner caught 2 more fine young rabbits. But instead of carrying them home, she walked to the king's palace and knocked on the door. The king's porter asked who was there. "I brought a present to the king," said Puss. "Please let me see his majesty." The porter let her in, and when Puss came into the king's presence, she made a low bow and, taking a fine rabbit out of her bag, said, "My lord Marquis of Carabas sends this rabbit to your majesty with his respect." "I'm much obliged to the Marquis," said the king, and he ordered his head cook to dress the rabbit for dinner. By the king's side sat his daughter. She ordered one of the attendants to give Puss a cup of cream, which she liked. His daughter. She ordered one of the attendants to give Puss a cup of cream, which she liked very much, and she went home and told her master all she had done. The miller's son laughed, but every morning Puss caught a rabbit and carried it to the palace with the same message. Now in that country there lived a cruel ogre who used to eat children, so everybody who was afraid of him, but nobody could kill him. He was a giant. One day Puss went to call on him. He received her, for he didn't care to eat cats. So Puss sat down and began to talk. "I hear," she said, "great ogre, that you're so clever, that you can turn yourself into any creature you please." "Yes, I can," said the ogre. "Dear me," said Puss, "how much I should like to see your ogre do it." Then the ogre, who liked to show how clever he was, turned himself into a lion and roared that Puss was terribly frightened and jumped out of the way. Then he changed back into an ogre. Puss praised him a deal and then said, "Can your ogreship become a small animal as well as a large one?" "Oh yes," said the ogre, and changed himself into a little mouse. Puss saw him in this form. She jumped and killed him on the spot. Then Puss ran home and bade her master go and bathe in the river, and he should see what she would do for him. The miller's son obeyed him, and while he was in the water, Puss took away all his clothes and hid them under a large stone. Now the king's carriage came in sight soon after, just as Puss had expected, for he always drove in that direction. And she saw it. She cried, "Help, help, for my lord, the Marquis of Carabas." The king put his head out and asked what was the matter. "Oh, your majesty," said Puss, "my master, the Marquis of Carabas, was bathing, and someone has taken away his clothes. He'll catch the palace, and get a suit of his own clothes for the Marquis, who had so often sent him gifts," he said. And when they were brought, Puss took them to her master and helped him to dress in them. The miller's son looked like a gentleman in the king's clothes, and when he went to thank his majesty for them, the king asked him to get back into the coach and he would drive him home. Then Puss told the coachman where to go and ran on before and came to some reapers. "Reapers," said she, "if the king asks you whose field this is, say it belongs to the Marquis of the Carabas. If you don't say so, you shall be chopped as small as mince meat." Creepers were so frightened that they promised to obey her, and she ran on and told all the other labourers on the road to say the same. So when the king asked to whom these fields belong to?" The reapers answered, "To the Marquis of Carabas." The herdsmen said the same of the cattle, and the king, turning to the miller's son, said, "My lord, you have a fine property." But all had belonged really to the ogre, for it was to his castle the cat had told the coachman to drive. At last the coach stopped at the ogre's castle, and Puss came down, bowing very low, said, "Your Majesty and the Princess are welcome to the castle of my Lord Marquis of Carabas." The king was delighted, for it was indeed a very nice castle full of riches. They sat down to a great feast, which Puss ordered to be served, and the king was so pleased with the miller's son, and thought him such a good match for the princess, that he invited him to the court, and in a little while gave him his daughter for his wife, and made him a prince. You may be quite sure that the miller's son was very grateful to Puss for his good fortune, and she never had to catch mice for her dinner anymore for meat, and the best cream was given to Puss in Boots. The end. I really hope you enjoy my story. Don't forget to watch, like, and add some comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe ZMC TV.